Hi there. Are you ready for an Opus 19 deck tech on one of my favorite decks from this Opus? And I know I haven't really done a lot of deck techs for this one, for this Opus, but I really do love the Category 6 stuff and been playing it for quite a while, but I kind of just wanted to give it a more, hopefully, just kind of in-depth talk that it's just been on my mind. So a couple things just to get out of the way right away. This deck has had success at several competitive tournaments around the world, in Europe, in America. I don't know the Japanese meta as much, so maybe it's doing well over there. That I don't know, but at least in America and Europe. So there are lists you can look at that are competitive lists that have clearly done well and have succeeded. So by all means, if you are looking for a list that can top a tournament, go look up one of those lists that topped a tournament. I know Chris Adams made second with it in Florida. He's got a list on here. You can look up the Bellanu one Materia Cup. It won that one. So by all means, you have options. So if you want a winning list, you can go find those, because mine is a little different, and I'm not saying mine's superior in any way. I'm just going to explain why I like mine and why I want to play mine. So those are those lists. If you're interested, go find those. Go check those out. Now, the biggest thing, and I won't get into it super deep here at the moment, but I just want to obviously mention it. So the whole point of this Category 6 deck is it's essentially a title deck, and that this lock, every time you cast a Category 6 card, you reveal the top card of your deck. If it's 6, you get to add it to your hand. Otherwise, it goes to the break zone, which when every card in your deck is Category 6, you draw a card. Yeah, basically it says anytime you do anything, you draw a card off of it, which is awesome. Again, and there are plenty of decks out there, including those lists, that are 100% Category 6 decks that you can choose. This deck contains 3 non-Category 6 cards right here, which is Amaterasu. I'll, of course, explain my reasoning for that later, but I'm just saying right now, if you're not interested in that, that's fine. This isn't the deck tech for you. If you want a deck that is 100% 6, then by all means, take those 3 out, put in whatever you want, or just, again, go grab one of those other winning lists and use those. So, now, if you are interested in why I would, quote-unquote, hurt my own lock chances and all that, then stick around, and we've got a lot to talk about. So, core of this deck is, of course, ice and fire. And, again, lock is a huge, huge core part of this deck. It's an EX burst, gets 2 cheaper. Whenever you have 2 Cat 6 characters or more on the field, a lot of the Category 6 characters want to play with other Category 6 characters. They do have a lot of synergy that way. And the big thing is, well, when you cast a Category 6 card, like I said, you essentially get to always draw one. Now, in my version of the deck, I have the 3 Amaterasu, which can cause it to whiff. So if Lock reveals Amaterasu, Amaterasu goes into the break zone, and you don't get to draw a card. Some people hate that feeling, so they will not run anything that is not 6. Again, I get it. That's fine. So why do I have Amaterasu in here? Well, so here's the big thing with the 6 deck, right? It has a lot of punch and a lot of power. In particular, and in my opinion, a lot of that comes from Edgar and Sabin. And if you have Edgar and Sabin on the field once per turn for free, it doesn't cost you anything, you pay 0. Edgar allows Sabin to use a special ability for free. Sabin can then blast something for 8,000 damage. That is the most reliable way to remove forwards from your opponent's board that this deck has. It is the most reliable, most efficient way to do that. Sabin also has another special ability, Chakra, which activates all the forwards other than himself, and they gain 2,000 power to the end of the turn. That can be used as a combat trick to suddenly make your 7Ks 9 and your 9s 11 and your 8s, 10. It also has nice little synergy with this new Amaro that if he sacrifices himself, he'll blast something based on his power. Well, if Sabin uses Chakra, he's going to bump it up to a 10K. So now he can take out a 10K, which is very nice. But, so this is the most efficient form of removal in this deck. However, the main thing that I don't like about the 6 package is that it's great on your turn, but it has very, very little interaction on your opponent's turn. And if you look at these cards, there's not a whole lot that allows you to do something on your opponent's turn. So, for example, this was a deck that was played at the Kansas City Materia Cup. I'm not picking on this person in particular. I'm just using it as an example. So they run the Stooges, and we'll get to the Stooges in a moment as well. So there's no summons of this. It's 34 forwards, 16 backups. He's running the Gestalt, which I have in my list as well. We'll go into that. What can we do on our opponent's turn? Let's say we have no forwards on the field. The most we can do is, I think, a Shadow. No, that forward has to go to the break zone. I'm thinking of the other Shadow. Yeah, so if we have no forwards on the field, we can't do anything. If Edgar's on the field, we still can't do anything because it's limited to our turn. No effects, no effects. Amaro has one, so Amaro's one of the main effects. Laragorn technically has his action ability, but I have never seen someone pull that off in a 6 deck, given that it needs lightning CP. This Sabin can't do anything. This Sabin is the main way to interact, but again, it requires other Sabins at hand because Edgar is only on our turn. Celeste can't do anything. General Leo kind of negatively impacts us as it forces us to block. Mobius can't do anything. And Kurlax, if the other 2 Stooges are there, he does have a form of interaction on our opponent's turn. GoGo technically does, but I don't think I've ever seen someone use Mimic. I don't think that's come up. But if GoGo and Sabin are on the field, that won't matter. He needs to be able to use Mimic. If GoGo and Kurlax are on the field, again, very limited, or GoGo and Amaro. So the main form of interaction we have on our opponent's turn is Amaro. And Sabin if we have a special in hand. I don't think that's enough in a meta as strong as this one is, with instant interaction and so many abilities you can do during your opponent's turn. And in particular, here's the other thing too. If these 2 forwards aren't on the field, and we can look at this one, we'll keep it consistent. If your opponent has nothing to worry about. If Sabin is not on the field, what do they have to worry about? What was your Celeste and your Locke and your Mog gonna do on their turn? Absolutely nothing. They have free reign and a green light to do whatever they want. Now, this deck doesn't have a great way to deal with Hecaton Kyre, the 5-cost sweeper summon, other than General Leo. But Shantoto is such a big blowout against this deck because it goes very heavy on the forwards, which makes sense when you're drawing so many cards off of Lock, and then they can just blow you out with Shantoto. But if you have Amaterasu, they do not have the green light that they know at any time they can Shantoto and it's going to work. And Amaterasu in general, they can't just Leviathan, I know this is going to work. They can't just, Ice Lightning, Alcid, Zero Miss Sephiroth. They can't guarantee that's going to work if you've got a backup up and 2 cards in hand. I had that happen testing with a buddy the other day, and he actually said, you see, that's why I don't run the Amaterasu, because it did. Lock revealed Amaterasu, it had to go to the break zone, so it caused a whiff. And he's like, well, that's why I don't run that. But then later, as we were testing further, he had turns where, if not for Amaterasu, he would have just been, okay, I'm going to do this and this and this, and then I'm going to win. He had to sit there and think about it. He's got a backup up, and he's got 3 cards in hand. He could do something, and in my opinion, you have to put that fear into them. They have to at least consider the fact that this Shantoto might not work, and if I Shantoto this board, and I don't clean out these 4 or 5 forwards, whatever it is, I'm going to get blown out. I'm going to lose, especially with potential haste from Interceptor. So that's why I run the Amaterasu. I think it's far too important again, even if you don't physically have it in hand, just that fear of it, that they have to consider that. They have to be aware of that. You need to tell your opponent at some point, hey, I could do something. If I'm sitting across from a Category 6 player at a tournament and I read the deck list and I see there's no Amaterasu, again, as a player, okay, I've got a complete green light, especially if Sabin isn't on the board. And Sabin's kind of the trickier one because you have to account for both Chakra and Aura Cannon. Even if Amaro's on the board, okay, well, I know what most he can do is just, break the Amaro to hit one of my forwards, which he's still losing a forward for that. So it's not like it's a total net loss for me. So that's why I like Amaterasu. I think it's 100% worth it. And I really enjoyed having it in here. I'll reiterate again, just for the sake of it. Again, if you do not want to whiff on your lock, take it out. Play your version where you do not whiff on the lock. I get it. I understand it. But for me, you need to be able to put some fear into your opponent on their turn so they can't just, I'll just do whatever I want, and I know there's nothing you can do about it. Now, let's go into the other parts of the deck. Speaking of Amaterasu, 3 copies of Terra. Terra can recur the Amaterasu. This was actually a suggestion Chris told me originally. I know he eventually went off of it, but I still like that. Now, does it come up a whole lot? No, it really doesn't. And to be honest, there are times I've considered swapping this Terra out for the forward one. Unless you want your ice-fire ratios to be a little different, I don't think that's a terrible idea. It also means Amaterasu then can kill something like a Leviathan or an Une or a Warrior of Light if you have that forward Terra that's going to ping for an extra 2k. It's still a 4 cost. It still gets you a summon back on a burst. So the only reason I is just for backups. If we take that out, then I'm down to 13 backups, which makes me just a little nervous. So if it weren't for that, I think the forward Terra could see a lot of success in here. Cyan is just to fill out, the 6 slots, as is a Shadow. I don't think this Shadow action ability has ever come up. Obviously, you want as many Interceptor as you can. Sid, so he can search out any 6 forward. Setzer, again, EX Burst Recursion. Emperor Gestalt. I've seen this in a few lists. Again, we see it here in this Kansas City list, and I've seen some people cut it. It is a dart card, and I would be lying to you if I said it never bricks my hand, and there's never a point where the dart card comes up at the wrong time and feels bad. It absolutely does. So again, if you're not interested in that, if you're not interested in the fact that you'll never be able to use his action ability because there's no other dark forward to cheat into play, again, you can cut it. I get it. However, for me, developing a backup and a straight break on some of the forwards in this meta is crucial. What if they have Rydia, which is very popular? We have no way to deal with Rydia in this deck other than Vargas, which that just doesn't come up very often, that I'm going to be able to get Vargas and get his trigger and force the Rydia to block. But Sabin can't hurt her. Yeah. Everything else here is damage. I don't think the Amaro works either. Someone can double check me on that. So other than that, we have what? This Amaro to just send her straight off the field. This is huge, especially Warrior of Light. The 6 deck, in my opinion, struggles to deal with forwards that are 9k or higher because, again, what are their hit zones? Amaro for 8,000, Sabin for 8,000. That is their most efficient way of dealing with something. Yes, you can Aura Cannon into GoGo Copy to do 15,000. You can Amaro Break into GoGo Copy to do 15,000, but you're using 2 resources. You have to have GoGo out there as well. Whereas Emperor Gestalt, I've personally really liked just as a one-of that, oh, your Warrior of Light's there, gone. Oh, your Une's there, gone. Rydia, gone. So, again, you don't want to worry about the dark. Take it out. You could just replace it with a 3rd Cyan, a 2nd Shadow, really whatever you wanted to, but I think having at least a one-of for that break is absolutely huge. Mog, and it's funny, I have a non-title version of the 6 deck, which I'll show you here at the end, but Mog, he doesn't have as many slots in there. I think I lowered him to 2 because sometimes I didn't have enough characters. Here, Mog should always be free. If you can't play Mog for free, something has gone horribly wrong. So you'll never have to worry about the water. And his on-entry on damage 3 is incredible. 4 free, play a 9k, that dull freezes anything and draws a card. Excellent. 4 damage 3, he's kind of just a body, but that's okay. You're happy to have him. His first strike can be very relevant with Salas in particular. Giving first strike to this party attack. A lot of times people will block a party because they want to get rid of Salas. They don't want you to keep using her trigger over and over again, but the first strike makes that very good in your favor. I don't know why I said Celeste. It's Salas is what I've always called her. Now, Lock. I wanted to talk about some things about Lock. I have seen a lot of people, they'll curve out, they'll get one of each, right? They'll get an Interceptor and a Setzer down, and then they'll just jam Lock out when both of those are already tapped, and then the next turn try to start getting Lock's triggers to go off because they only have like 1 card left. Do not do that. Do not do that play. The only reason you would ever jam Lock out before you can start taking advantage of his effect is if you have Salas on board and you need that party attack next turn. You're trying to, they're a late game setup deck, and you need to freeze those backups to really put them behind. Other than that, Lock doesn't need to go in right away, but I've seen so many people will basically empty their hand to put the Lock out, exposing him to removal. Then it goes to the opponent's turn. They remove it. Typhon, Famfrit, Yuna, you name it, whatever form of removal. And now you have that lock hasn't done anything. You paid 4. Yeah, it's a discount. We still paid 4 for nothing. You put the lock out on a turn you can continue to generate value. So next turn in that scenario described, just wait, let your backups untap, put your lock out. Now you put out your Terra as well, or your Sid, or your Mog, and now suddenly you start getting lock triggers off of that. But yeah, do not put out lock until you are ready to start casting and taking advantage of that. Just don't do it. I've seen it happen too many times, and yeah, then the poor lock dies, and then that's it. Speaking of lock, we have to mention his awesome Opus 4 version. This card is still incredible. There's honestly times I've been tempted to go more into this one than this one. Obviously, that's in the non-title version because this lock needs it to be in a basically title version. Because this lock's still just very good, and it works with Edgar. Edgar can make this lock unblockable for free, and the discard is still very, very nice. Ideally, you really want to get this lock out, but because this lock also has a special ability, if this one comes on the field, it's okay, and then you can start discarding this one to this one's special. So, very good. Vargas is mainly in here just as kind of ways to fill up the 6 numbers. On occasion, his effect will come into play, which is where if a forward other than himself is put in from the field to the break zone, Vargas gains 3,000 power to the end of the turn, and then when he attacks, you can choose, it's optional, up to 1 forward opponent controls. If he's got 10,000 or more power, you can activate that forward and force it to block Vargas, to basically get rid of it. This has really nice synergy with Sabin. If Sabin blasts something off the field with Aura Cannon, Vargas is going to get a 3k bump. Remember, that's not limited once per turn, so if you get multiple forwards, he's going to bump and bump and bump. Really good with Amaro. Amaro can purposely put himself in the break zone to bump the Vargas. And even if the Amaro doesn't kill it, it still triggers because a forward went to the break zone. So he doesn't, again, he's only one of because he's really not a main strategy. He's kind of just there if you've got nothing else to draw. But he does have some cute little synergies. GoGo is pretty obvious if you know this card. It will copy the first action ability used by a monster or forward you control. There's no monsters in the deck, so it's going to be a forward. The main action abilities we want to copy is, of course, Sabin and Amaro. These are our 2 interactors. Sorry, not Sabin. What he actually copies is Edgar's ability to give it to Sabin. So the way it'll work, Edgar will use his effect, target Sabin, then GoGo will copy that before the Edgar can even attempt to resolve. So GoGo will go on top. You let GoGo resolve first. Before Edgar resolves, use one of Sabin's effects, probably Aura Cannon. Then Edgar resolves, and you get another free Aura Cannon. It does work that way. We've checked all the judge rulings, so that one's really good. GoGo can copy Umaro's action ability. GoGo will not put himself in the break zone. He'll essentially assume the text of choose a forward, deal it damage equal to GoGo's power. So if Amaro puts himself in for 8, shoots a forward for 8, GoGo will copy it. You can target a forward for 7. So you can pile up 15,000 on a single forward. Good. Sometimes it doesn't come up and people know that GoGo's good, so they will probably try to get this off the field. But again, those are your main key pieces with Edgar, Sabin, and Amaro. GoGo Amaro on its own is quite nice, whereas GoGo, Sabin, and Edgar is obviously 3 forwards you've got to maintain, but that's the main thing he's in here for. Also, you can technically use Mimic. It has never come up for me. Again, rarely does GoGo live a turn. If I'm either have already won that game or I just end up losing. But if it does come up, you can copy a special ability that has been used this turn. So you could copy Mirage Dive. You could copy Sabin's Chakra or Aura Cannon. Rarely comes up, but it is there just in case. General Leo should only be played against decks that are very, very summon heavy. You do not want your forwards to be forced to block. There are a few forwards that help mitigate it. Can you guess what they are? Oh, that's right. It's Sabin and Amaro, the 2 forwards we have that, again, can do something on our opponent's turn. Because if you're forced to block and they send in an 8k and then you have a Chakra that you can pump, General Leo's actually at 10k now, and he can block that way. And then Amaro can block and then sack himself on the stack of the block, or after the block is declared for his effect. But if one of these 2 are not on the field, do not play this card unless again, they have a super summon heavy deck, then it is good to lock those cards out. But even if they've got like the Rydia Wool list, okay, you've turned off the Rydia, but if they've got a Warrior of Light there who's just going to then punch into you with his first strike and take everything out, that's no good. So be very mindful of playing General Leo. And again, this deck runs our own Amaterasu, and he will prevent that. So only put him out if you really think it is going to make a difference in the matchup. Otherwise, he's just there as a 6 character to trigger lock and for fodder. Salas is excellent. It's pretty much all you could want in a card. I will very often switch between the discard and the lock search on entry. It just depends on what you need. Sometimes I've gone Salas turn 1 if I don't have a good opening. You go search out the lock, hopefully get something else to make lock 1 cheaper, or you can still go with the old Opus 4 lock at that point. And then when one or more Category 6 forwards you control form a party and attack, you can either freeze 2 characters, or you can choose a Category 6 character in your break zone, add it into your hand. Obviously, the most common tempting thing to do is freeze their dull backups if they have them. However, again, if you have the Sabin on the field, recurring extra Sabin to use for the special is one of the best things you can do. Remember too, Celeste doesn't have to be in the party. She just has to see it. This card will have a huge target on its back, and people will kill this card a lot because she's very strong. Sabin is, to me, the cornerstone of the deck. I don't think, even with all the lock triggers, I don't think this deck works nearly as well without Sabin. So he gets cheaper for every 6 character you control. There basically shouldn't be a scenario where you're ever having to pay more than 1 for him. If you are, again, something probably went terribly wrong. And again, he is our main form of efficient removal with his brother Edgar, and one of our only key ways to interact positively on our opponent's turn. Yes, Amaro can do it too, but again, Amaro, even if, like, let's say Amaro takes something out of Fusoya, Umaro still dies for that, so you're still losing a body, whereas Sabin can just do it with a card in hand. So this is the key card of the game. As you can see, there's 3 other Sabin. Never play the Sabin. The only reason you ever play the Sabin is because things have gone terrible and you're trying to survive and you're out of this Sabin. You can't find him, you can't get him. But the last thing you want to have happen is to get this Sabin on the field or this Sabin on the field, and then you're stuck with him. That your opponent can dull freeze him or some way to force those Sabins to stay there, and then you can never get the primary one out. They're just here for S special fodder for Chakra and Aura Cannon. This Sabin could be anything. Again, you could put any other alternate Sabins in here you want because you don't ideally want to play them. I chose this one because I have sentimental value for it. 2, if I absolutely had to play another Sabin, I think this one does the most out of any of them, as he can enter and attack and just make something not broken. And then he also has a special, so if he's here, you could use Rising Phoenix in a pinch if you absolutely had to. But Sabin is great. Sabin is the key cornerstone of the deck. Do not throw this card out early. I will see people do it. And yes, we have some recursion, right? We do have some recursion in Edgar and Setzer. So it's not a total loss if it goes, but be mindful of what your opponent is running, especially if you know they've got a Mist Dragon, a Kadaj, any way to hate on your break zone. You do not want to lose this card, so do not throw it out if you can absolutely help it. Next, we have Amaro. Amaro is very potent in this deck because, again, other than these Amaterasus, everything you draw is going to be a Category 6 character, which means that if nothing else that turn, you can always discard 2 of these cards to bring Amaro back onto the field from the break zone. He will come in dull, so just be mindful that unless you're planning to sack him right away, he's just going to be a dull forward. But again, he could be reactivated with something like Sabin Chakra. That's a nice little combo. Unlike Sabin, Umaro, I think you are okay to throw out early because, again, he can kind of be recurred as you need him to. As far as putting him on the field, you're paying for a forward that doesn't do anything on entry. Be very mindful. Do not do that if they don't have anything on the board. If they have a forward that he can kill that's 8k or less, absolutely it's safer to put him out because then, again, let's say they immediately do something to him. They Famfrit, they, Valafor, whatever your chosen removal spell is. They Arc Chaos. it's okay because you can immediately sack him, blast one of their forwards. But if they don't have a forward, you don't want to have to sack him for nothing. So don't put him out unless they have a target that you can hit with that. Or unless, obviously, you're in such an overwhelming, like, winning position, you're just trying to flood the board with forwards and give him haste for victory or whatever. But beyond that, you want to be able to sack him if possible. Also, don't forget, in the event of a Shantoto and your Amaterasu is not handy, he can hit your own forwards. So instead of them getting removed entirely from the game, Edgar is a huge one, have him shoot the Edgar. Put him in the break zone. It just says choose any forward. You can have him blast his own Edgar. That way Edgar dies and goes to the break zone and isn't removed entirely by Shantoto. So do not forget you can do that. And Edgar is, of course, our other engine. You can get back any Category 6 forwards besides himself, which is basically the whole team. And, of course, Sabin is his main target. You can give it to Lock. Again, to make Lock unblockable, sometimes that is the preferred method, especially maybe if, I don't know, if they've just got something the Aura Cannon isn't going to kill. I would highly recommend, whenever you've got the Sabin-Edgar combo, always at least prep the Sabin, because it lasts for the entire turn. So have Edgar give him his effect, and, like, let's say you're going to go to combat, have Edgar give him his effect, now go to combat. Of course, unless you're worried about creating a stack. But just the thing is, don't necessarily wait till, like, you've gone in for your first point of damage, because there's nothing worse than hitting an EX burst. I've had this happen. You know, I'll attack with, let's say I attack with this Lock, and I haven't prepped the Sabin yet, and then EX burst kills the Edgar, bounces the Edgar to hand, whatever. Oh, crap. I didn't give Sabin his effect. Oops. And now he doesn't have it. So just make sure Sabin is always just prepped and ready to go with it. And then finally, Big Daddy 7 cost Amaro. I see some people not value this because they're like, well, I've already gotten Amaro. What does it matter? Again, we're trying to fill out our 6 slots. This person didn't run it. And again, there's just some forwards that you need this card to deal with. This deck, again, struggles with 9k and above. 8k, sweet spot from Sabin. 8k, sweet spot from Amaro. Whereas this Amaro, it doesn't care how much its power is. It doesn't care if it's Rydia and it has protection. Unless it says it can't be chosen, he just says whatever the worst thing is on your field, get it off, send it to the bottom of your deck. And in addition to that, I'll freeze something as well. There are times I will make the mistake of not putting this Amaro out because I can't get the 2-for-1. Because yes, there's something I can send packing, but I can't freeze anything. That's okay. If it sends something important packing, do it. Pull the trigger on that. And this Amaro is 2 cheaper if Mog is on the field. And as we know, it's pretty easy to get Mog on the field since he's free. And paying 5 for this feels so much better than paying 7. So I still really like this guy. He's for those forwards that are just going to give you trouble. It's really good against, like, Leviathan, Lord of the Whirl. He's not bouncing. It sends him to the bottom of the deck, so it's not going to trigger any of that. So, really a big fan of him. So this is my version of the Title 6 list. Again, mine, I just want a bit more interaction during my opponent's turn, which is why we value the Amaterasu and a few other things. I want to talk about a few of the cards that aren't in here. First is all the new Water 6 support we got in this deck. Obviously, Mog's in here because we don't have to worry about the water. Realm is essentially, yeah, you could try to go for the monster, but I don't think if you don't have your own summons to do, you shouldn't use Realm, and I don't think Amaterasu really works with Realm, although I do like the idea of them somehow. I don't even know what it would look like. I mean, because Realm would enter first, so I don't know. Anyway, just don't use Realm. I've seen some people have lists where they put in some water, they put in Gao, they put in Strago, and it seems like they can get to enough water cards that it's more consistent than I had initially thought, or at least these people seem to make it look better. For me, it's just a consistency thing. It's that there's no backups that can tap for this element, so you must have another element in hand to be able to use these cards, and that's just not my play style. I've tried it in the past. It just doesn't work for me. If it works for you, by all means, you can throw these guys in here. Gao, of course, can back attack, and then for all your 6 characters, he's going to buff something up by 1,000. Awesome. And then he can get you a card draw and go back to the deck if he wants. Strago is a really good entry and exit effect, which essentially says draw on entry and then draw on exit. And his Revenge Blast is, for the most part, inferior to Aura Cannon, right? Because it's only 2,000 for every point of damage you've received. So while Sabin can do 8,000 even if you haven't been hit once, Strago can't do 2,000 until you've at least taken a point of damage. However, it is also power reduction, so it can get around things like Radius Protection, or it could be used as a combat trick. Haha, you thought your Warrior of Light could block my Mog that was 9k, but actually you've just lost 2,000 power, so now Mog's going to win. And then, once you get to damage 4 and above, it actually is superior to Chakra, right? Because power reduction is stronger than just straight damage, so on damage 4, you're doing 8k power reduction, so that's basically the equivalent of Chakra, Aura Cannon. And then if you get to 5, 6, you're doing 10, 12,000 reduction. So there is merit to these cards. I love them. I did honestly try an original list with them, but it just felt too bricky for me personally. Last, but certainly not least, we have to talk about the Dream Stooges. So I've seen a lot of different opinions on these guys. Some people really value them and love them. Some decks haven't. Some decks have cut them entirely. And I've played with a couple different people who really like them and really don't like them. Can they be good? Yes, 100%. My original version of this list did have the Dream Stooges. And when you can get them all out there, they're good. They're genuinely good. Kurlax being able to Dull Freeze on your turn and their turn is awesome. It is a great action ability. Them not being 6Ks, which is really poor, but going up to 8K with Mobius is way better. The reason I don't like them is because you have to have all three on the field at the same time to really accomplish anything. So if you just have 2 of them or 1 of them, Mobius doesn't get his effect. He has blank text there, which means he's just a 6k body, because after his entry effect, he doesn't do anything else. So if it's just Mobius Kurlax or Mobius Laragorn, he doesn't do anything. Same with Kurlax. The discard can be nice, but he doesn't have text if both Laragorn and Mobius aren't there. Laragorn has a great entry effect, but we're not going to get off this action ability in this Title 6 deck. I've heard of other decks that are like a Fire, Ice, Lightning mix, whether they're Black Waltzes or Agado Cadets or whatever, that the Stooges work well in because you can actually pay for this ability. And this ability is really good because, again, since they all need to be together on the field, having the ability to recur them at will is huge. We just can't pull it off in this deck because the only lightning cards we would have would be our 3 Mobius. So it's just not viable. Again, if they did more on their own, I'd be more willing to use them, but the fact that they all 3 must be on the field together to really have an effect, I just don't think is worth it. It's 9 slots you have to dedicate to the deck. I was much happier to put those 9 slots to other forwards, and again to a card like Amaterasu, which I think will always have a bigger impact than the Stooges would. But again, if you are a person who likes the Stooges, by all means, throw them in there. I'm just telling you why they don't work for me and why I went with a different direction. Because, again, there's 6 characters. They do work with the lock reveal. They work with all the other 6 synergy. I just don't like having a third element that I really struggle to use. And it feels good when you can go Laragorn to Mobius to Kurlax and you're freezing everything. Feels awesome. But then a single one of them dies and now they don't do anything anymore. And for me, I'm just not willing to take that inconsistency. So there you go. That's my version. I hope you've enjoyed it. I do love Category 6. Before we go, let me show you the non-title version. Here is the non-title version I'm running. It's very similar to my Opus 17 list. Again, you're not going in on the 5-cost lock, so you don't have to go so heavy on the 6 characters. You can tech in basically more resource hate in the form of Lastwell, Charlotte for protection, Orphan for hand. Susano gives you a board wipe, which I sorely do miss in the title version because it's nice to come back. You can vary up your summons a little bit. Bahamut is huge against Warrior of Light or against 13, can help pick up off stuff. And you can put in a backup like Edward, which lets you pick apart things in their break zone, which is really nice, or a backup like Kuchaspel that does let you deal with the Rydia. Again, only 2 Mog in this one because sometimes it is tricky without the total abundance of 6 characters, but this is again, if you wanted to play some form of Cat 6, but you didn't want to go in on the title, happy to throw this one in there. I'll put the link in the description below along with the other one. Most people seem pretty enamored with the title version right now, and I get it because it's so fun to keep drawing cards, but this one's there too if you're interested. That is it. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Hopefully I was able to give you some insight on why I like this deck so much and why I think it's a cool deck. Some of the things it struggles with, some of the things it does well. Maybe not. Maybe you already knew all that and all that. But anyway, thank you for listening. Hooray for Category 6. Hopefully it gets more support in the future because it's the first Final Fantasy game I've ever played. So, of course, it's always got a very special place in my heart. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.